All right, cool. Now that that question has been answered, we can get going for real. So welcome everybody. For those who don't know me, I'm Cassandra Ferris. I am the community manager here at SaltStack. A lot of what I do is try to help make life easier for our contributors and our community members. And I do a lot of work in collaboration between the SALT core team and our SALT open contributor base. This is the open hour. We do this every Thursday at 11 a.m. Mountain, 5 p.m. UTC. And every week it's basically just a chance for community members and core team members to sit around and chat about SALT. Some weeks we have just one specific topic. So for instance, we did release frequently asked questions and a roadmap a few weeks ago. We're going to be doing a talk or maybe about some code security things here in a few weeks. Some other processes and things we've gone through, testing, Tiamat, all these things that we're working on. So this is just a time for everybody to talk about what's happening with SALT, keep you all informed. And if there are topics or questions that people want to propose, I do take topic suggestions, and I'm glad to discuss those things in open hour meetings. So today's agenda, we did have one item that we had to take off of the agenda due to a test that wasn't working, so there's been a little bit of a change. We won't be covering the validate and sanitize item, but we still will be talking about PyTest. We'll still be covering the Tiamat and runtime register SEPs. So chit chat about SaltConf and the Docs Clinic and some other events that we have going on as well. If anybody has questions or comments, feel free to speak up verbally, drop that in the chat. I will make sure that we incorporate you into the conversation. And then once the open hour wraps up within the next 5 days or so, I will publish the video up on YouTube as well as publish updated open hour notes on the wiki. And notes and videos are now time-stamped so you can jump right to a specific topic that is of interest to you. So that news and updates, we have, we're still doing the triage on our Twitch streams. We do that every Tuesday morning. We also do research and development, Twitch, and test clinics. Test clinics are a great time for you to get help with your tests so that we can have things be green and you can have them merged into the SALT project. So definitely attend some test clinics. Triage and R&D are a good way to get some insight into what happens behind the scenes. So check out those. That schedule of events is on the SALT community events calendar, which you are welcome to subscribe to. This week, as far as what the core team focus has been, it's been on several different things, some focus on ZD issues, some resolving bugs, working on some rules features, and then just kind of getting ready because we have feature freeze coming up here in the next week. And I did see in community Slack, some people were asking about the status of their PRs and whether or not they were going to be merged into Magnesium. In general, if PRs are green, have passing tests, and are labeled as Magnesium, they should be merged in within the next week. Did I miss anything on the criteria for having things merged?
I think that sounds right.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Some of them kind of depend on if they need to have a change log or they need to have, you know, documentation. That's sort of a little bit fuzzier, but yes, I think that's right.
Cool. So that's kind of a frequently asked question. If there are specific PRs that you need help with or want an extra set of eyes on or something, reach out to me. I'll try to get somebody to help you with them as much as we can, because we do want to get as many things merged as possible. See, all of that said, some events coming up. We are going to have a documentation jam that was scheduled for early fall. We may wind up having to change the scheduling of that. I think we'll start determining that here in the next day or two, but just with release timelines and stuff, there might be some conflicts. So I'll keep you posted on the dates and times of the documentation jam. I just found out that we're likely changing the date about 5 minutes before this meeting, so haven't had a chance to really look into that yet. But basically what that'll be is it'll be a chance for everybody to get together and work on documentation, work on improving it. I know the documentation work group has identified specific areas of documentation that we're going to focus on, and a recurring theme of community feedback, of community conversations, of what y'all are looking for is that we need to improve the documentation. So this is going to be a great way for everybody to get together and work together in real time to make documentation better for all of us. And then last kind of housekeeping item, SaltConf Virtual is a go for October 29th. We do have an open call for proposals that is open until Monday. I've had several people reach out to me with possible topic suggestions. Some community members weren't sure if their suggestions or their topics were actually a fit for SALT conference, but we will definitely have a track and talks that are catered to our community, our contributor base, as well as our enterprise and open users. So if you have a talk idea, you're doing some cool integrations, you were a meetup speaker, any of that stuff, go ahead and submit a talk through our call for speakers form. I will link it here in the chat, but I can also send it to you later. But we're definitely looking for some talks on several different things. So just to give you an idea of some examples of what we're looking for talk-wise. Event-driven automation, security vulnerability management, policy audits, software-defined data systems, large-scale deployments, implementations, multi-cloud orchestration. Of particular interest is integrating SaltStack with other tools, ServiceNow, Splunk, security tools, monitoring. Somebody did a talk on Zabbix and SaltStack. All that sort of stuff's really interesting because it helps us have practical use cases for SaltStack. Talks about kind of general tips and tricks, or maybe some interesting use cases, perhaps, Internet of Things or AI or machine learning type talks or projects that integrate Salt. So if you're doing something cool with Salt or excited about something, please go ahead and submit a talk proposal. If you want to bounce ideas off of me, if you want me to look over your abstracts, any of that stuff, I'm happy to help with that as well. And I think that's it for housekeeping items for me. Does anybody else have any other housekeeping items? All right, I'll take that as a no. The next thing that we have is it's SEP number 25. It's add runtime registers to SALT. There's been a little bit of conversation about this. I wasn't sure if people wanted to discuss it here, but I wanted to give everybody at least an opportunity to do that if that's something that people want to talk about. I know that this is a SEP that we're trying to determine if it's actually a SEP, if it's a full rewrite of everything. There's a lot of pieces to consider and think about. There's some good conversation going on, but if anybody has anything to add on that SEP, please let me know. Okay. I do know that the person who submitted that SEP is in a time zone that means that the open hours happen at 3 a.m., so just not really compatible with a lot of our schedules, or sorry, 3 a.m. his time. So a lot of the conversation on that is actually happening in the SEP itself. Okay. And then the other SEP is SEP 26, packaging salt with Tiamat. And I just wanted to give, again, if people have a chance to talk about this, if people want to get an overview, have questions about this particular SEP, let me know. We did a pretty extensive coverage of this particular SEP last week about kind of where Tiamat would and would not apply and what it'll do. And basically it's just going to make it so that it's generally going to make people's life easier when packaging. David or Bryce or anybody, do you have anything else to add about the Tiamat SEP?
Only if people have questions.
Yeah, I'm seeing chit chat on there every few days. Oh, this is an interesting question. Somebody had asked if there are any Tiamat builds of 3001.1 available to test with currently.
I was intending on building that this week, but with other things that have come up, I forgot about it. But we should make that happen. It should be as easy as just tagging the salt package repo.
Okay, cool. And then once that is up, we can just add it to that SEP.
Yeah.
Okay. One SEP administrative related note, so the naming and numbering convention was mixed up. Somebody didn't assign a number to the runtime register SEP. So I had to go back and change the title of that SEP and then change the number on the Tiamat SEP. So not anything major, but if you see that change in there, that was just me doing some administrative stuff.
I believe I already asked this question in the SEP itself, but I still haven't got an answer. So what is the, could someone explain what is the difference between single binary builds, one dir builds? What's the difference? Which platform will get which distribution of salt?
I can explain that. So Wonder is how everything is going to be packaged with debs and RPMs for Ubuntu, Debian, all the distros, and will be expected what people normally use in production. The single bin is meant more for testing pipelines. It's like just a single binary. It's not OS specific as far as the packaging goes. I also believe that the single binary will be used as part of Salt SSH. There is a slight performance hit on the single binary because it has to extract itself, which is why we're not using it in the main packages that we would expect people to use in production. So single binary is for Salt SSH and people who want to use it because it's easier for testing or things like that.
Will Salt SSH build this single binary dynamically, or it's precompiled and bundled with a distribution package?
I think Megan's working on that, so I think that'd be a question for Megan. I imagine it would use a precompiled one, but I'm not sure. I think Megan's implementing that.
Okay.
That's right, and she's busy implementing that, so she's not on this call today. We can take that back to Megan and get that answered.
Just a point on how the SEPs are working. There's been a fair bit of conversation in sort of comments for the pull request for that. And there've been various things that have been stated where it's been like, yes, we're going to do this. This is how this thing is going to work. But none of that actually currently seems to feed back into the SEP itself. So will the SEP be updated to, cover the things that have been agreed are going to happen?
Yes, that is the intent of the SEP, is
Okay.
to gather those and then go back and update that SEP pull request to include that. We may be a little bit behind on that, or we may be waiting for comments to then do it all in one go. It's everybody does those a little different, so we're kind of been open to that. I think that we have an outline of a time frame in there in the SEP sort of process and how it flows. And so I think we keep it open for comments for some time before we make any updates, but I don't actually remember. Gareth, do you remember that detail offhand?
Sorry, I was only partially paying attention there.
Yeah, that's okay. Or Cassandra, I think that it's listed in the SEP repo, sort of the process flow of how long we keep it open, and then we update the PR, and that is the intent. I don't remember if that's exactly explicitly stated in like a timeline, but I think that it's vaguely representative, and I think we could probably make that clearer as well. But yes, that is the intent, Bernie.
I think there's some flex. Oh,
go ahead, Cassandra.
Great, thanks.
Oh, I think there's some flexibility in the timelines, depending on how big the changes are. Because I've seen sit for weeks and some have been like months, so it just depends. What were you to say, Gareth?
I was just going to say, I think we'd also stated that depending on the number of changes, we would update the SEPs as like an ongoing thing. Like if someone pointed something out that was just wrong, we would update the SEP. And if it was something that was fundamentally wrong about the SEP, we would, in most cases, put in like a new SEP and close the like existing one.
Yeah, to answer the question though, I do think that's the intent here. This one is pretty big. I think that those that were working on it as well also got pulled into some other things recently and probably just haven't gotten back to it, but will. And that that's part of Cassandra's role as well, is to go back and make sure that all the comments and things that are said, oh yes, we're going to do this, that those are actually there before we merge that pull request. So we've tried to put some management around that as well.
Yeah, and full disclosure, I am SEP 25 and 26 are kind of my guinea pigs, so I am learning the process of SEP herding, we call it. So I'm learning that on these two SEPs kind of as we go. So but from here on out, I'll be trying to manage a lot of the SEP workflow.
That's great,
Awesome.
thanks.
Some fun ones to learn on.
Yep. At least unless or until we get our advisory board set up, because the advisory board that we're planning will also have a role in the SEP management.
Yeah, cool.
I'm starting to suspect that might just wind up being an aluminum deliverable. Speculation here, but that seems to be how the timeline is working out for it. So as we firm up those details, I'll keep people posted, of course. Any other SEP related questions or Tiamat related questions? All right, well, the last formal agenda item we had somebody in Community Select had asked a few weeks ago if we could start doing, it's great to know that working on bug fixes and issues and updates and things, but they wanted to know kind of some of the big picture things that we're doing with SALT. And so this person had asked for instance, what are we doing with PyTest? What are we doing with things like validate and sanitize? So we're going to start doing these kind of pieces of a big feature roadmap in some of these open hours. And so today we are going to be covering the PyTest. As we've been saying, SALT switched over to PyTest. Pedro has written a blog post on that. He's going to give us an overview of kind of why we've switched to PyTest and then how PyTest looks going forward.
Okay, so sorry. Unfortunately, I have to make a correction. We haven't yet switched to PyTest. We have made the necessary changes. We made the blog post, and we allowed enough time to go by so that the community would be aware of it and could read the blog posts and all of the other resources that we posted that blog post to, so that people would be aware. Right now, we are still not, we haven't still switched to PyTest. With the time that we allowed, we had some failures that squeezed in because on pull requests, we only test run tests.py. And so I'm actually in the middle of cleaning up the remaining failures for PyTest. And there's also one for Windows that needs to be fixed, which impacts both PyTest and run tests, so our old test runner. And until we have that fixed, we won't be switching. We want to switch when we are in a stable CI status, so that we are aware of any breaking failures with regards to PyTest, and not just because something was missed in the process. My idea right now is to, as soon as we clean up, we enable both run tests and PyTest for a week or two. Probably just 1 week is enough for pull requests, so that we know that the pull requests being merged are passing both on both test runners. And after that, we will finally switch. It's been a long road, so a couple of more weeks won't hurt that much. So that's more or less the status with regards to PyTest. When the blog post was done, everything was green, but unfortunately we did had some changes in our CI process that broke some stuff, and we are in the middle of fixing that. If there are any questions related to the process or PyTest itself, feel free to ask. As a curiosity, we are already getting pull requests which are writing tests using PyTest, which is awesome. And that was the whole idea behind this switch, and that's what we're after. If people don't know it, just want to extend the test suite, it's okay to write unit test cases. But we already have a few pull requests that are actually using the PyTest approach of writing tests, which is super awesome.
I'm not seeing any PyTest questions or comments in either of the chats. Sure, we'll keep posted once we do actually make that change. If anything else delays it, we'll let you know too.
I have a question.
Okay.
Are there any plans to have a tutorial or some guide on how to test custom execution and state models using PyTest fixtures? I remember it was promised some time ago and during the SaltConf talk, and it would be really helpful to have some basic guide, like short example of how to do that for custom models.
Yeah, the current testing documentation will become obsolete as soon as we switch. So we have plans to refactor that whole documentation. But this is regards to Salt itself, which might include some snippets which could help with your question. However, we took extra time on the switch to PyTest to create a PyTest plugin which would allow specifically what you're asking for. You want to test your own execution module or returner or Salt plugin without running the full test suite for Salt. That plugin is called PyTest Salt Factories, which greatly simplifies this process. The documentation on that plugin is still scarce, but we do have plans on updating both documentations for Salt, for the Salt test suite in particular, and what you're asking for will likely land on the PyTest Salt Factories documentation. You want to use a minimal setup to test your code outside of Salt, and that's what that PyTest plugin will actually allow you to do. So it's not done yet, but it's in the plans, and it will definitely get updated, and we will be including those kind of snippets and ways to test stuff.
Okay, so that is great.
That was also one of the main reasons why we wanted to switch to PyTest, because it makes it way more simpler to test these specific scenarios. So that's a big plus for us on why we chose it.
Anything else about PyTest? All right, cool. Well, that's the end of what we had formally scheduled since we had the agenda item change, but we still have half an hour. So if anybody has questions or things that they want to go over and review, please speak up now. This is the time for us to just chat. Are there any other updates or anything that you think I'm missing, Gareth or Sage?
I don't think so.
Nothing I can think of either.
Yeah, I think we're just wrapping up loose ends till feature freeze basically, so.
Yep.
And I think I see at least one person here who's new or who's only been on one or two of these open hours. How are you all hearing about the open hours? Through Slack, through Google? I'm just curious to know where people are getting their information so I can keep making sure I'm posting things in the right places. Max has a question. When is the feature freeze for magnesium going to happen? September 21st, is that correct? Or 22nd?
22nd. I guess it sort of depends on what time zone you're in. We usually do it US time, someday on the day that we've said, usually by end of day US hours, the 22nd.
Cool. And then somebody told me that they're hearing about the open hours from the IRC channel. That is, so I do post the Mondays, I post the what's happening at SaltStack updates that talk about core team focus, SEPs that are outstanding, any major release changes, as well as put an event schedule up. I do post those in Salt Announce Google group, in the Slack announcements channel, and then there's a what's happening at SaltStack page on the community wiki, and I link to that wiki for our IRC audience. And then same thing with the open hour agendas, those also get posted across Salt Announce, the announcements channel in Slack, and they're on the wiki so that I can share via IRC or Twitter or whatever other means we use. And for those who are newer to the open hours, if you have topics you'd like to talk about, maybe there's a project you're looking for help with, maybe there's a pet SEP or PR you want to talk about, maybe there's something you'd like to see, some area you'd like to see documentation improved, or just something you're curious about, this is a time that we can just, I mean, there's the only real set agenda items are that we do some updates and then we do kind of an open discussion. And so pretty much anything SALT related is fair game for open hour topics. So if there's something you'd like to discuss, let me know and I'll schedule it for an upcoming open hour. We're at a point now with these where I have a little bit of a backlog of upcoming topics for a few weeks out, which is really nice to have. And I'd like to see that going. Or if some of those topics are smaller, I can combine them into one open hour. All right, well, if nobody else has anything else to say, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap up. In about 20 minutes, the documentation work group is going to meet on Zoom as well. Feel free to join us if you're interested in documentation. We'll be doing some doc jam planning and just prioritization, so maybe I'll see you there. If not, just keep an eye out on Slack and IRC for what's happening. Reach out to me if you have questions or comments. As always, if I don't know the answer, and a lot of times I don't know the answer, I will find you the person who does. So feel free to reach out with questions or comments. I am here for you. Anything else anybody else has?
Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday. We'll see y'all later. Bye.